Chapter 14. "You're dead, Riva," a high-pitched voice cried out. "You're dead meat." Riva stumbled and fell to her knees on the hard marble floor. "I've got you now," the voice cried. "You're dead, you're dead, you're dead." "Huh?" Riva spun around. Her little brother stood over her, a savage grin on his face. His ice-blue eyes widened in anticipation as he raised the knife again. "Michael? No!" Riva scrambled to her feet. "What are you doing?" "Killing you," Michael yelled. He raised the knife higher, then plunged it toward Riva's chest. Gasping, Riva threw up her arm to block it. The blade slammed into her forearm, and collapsed into the handle of the knife. A retractable knife, Riva realized. A toy. Furious, she grabbed Michael's hand and wrenched the knife loose. "Ow, you twisted my finger," he wailed. "Serves you right," Riva snapped. "What do you think you're doing? You scared me to death." "Good," he grinned again. "That's what the evil Avenger is supposed to do." "Listen, Michael, I'm totally upset and exhausted," Riva said. "I'm definitely not in the mood for your stupid games." "It's not a game," he protested. "The evil Avenger never plays games." As Riva scowled at him, footsteps sounded behind her. She jumped and spun around. The droopy-haired maid stood in the living room doorway. "Don't sneak up on me like that," Riva snapped. "Sorry, miss," the maid muttered. "I came to tell you that you have visitors. They're waiting for you in the living room." "No kidding!" Riva rolled her eyes. Daddy absolutely had to get rid of this one. "Next time I'm not here, don't let anyone come in and wait for me." "Sorry." The maid blew a strand of hair away from her face. "Shall I tell them you're here now?" "Not yet," Riva said impatiently. "First, I'm going up to my room. I'll be back down when I'm good and ready." As Riva turned around, Michael dove after her. Laughing wickedly, he snatched the fake knife from her hand and raced up the stairs. Riva stared after him. Talk about a disturbed kid. No wonder Daddy is worried. Ever since my kidnapping, all Michael does is act out these violent fantasies. I'm glad that's all they are. Fantasies. Pam sat in one of the big wing chairs near the fireplace in the living room. "I wish Riva would hurry up," she declared. Willow snorted. "I have the feeling she's going to take her sweet time about coming down to see us." "The maid said she looked upset," Pam reminded her. "I don't blame her. I mean, she's the one who found Tracy." She shivered. Not even Riva could stay cool after finding a strangled girl with a pole jammed through her back. Maybe she's lying down for a few minutes. "A few long minutes," Willow complained, glancing at the clock on the mantel. "Look, what happened to Tracy is awful, but it's not like she was Riva's best friend or anything, right?" "Hardly," Pam said. "They couldn't stand each other. I think Uncle Robert forced Riva to hire Tracy to model the scarves." "To model our scarves, you mean?" Willow paced back and forth in front of the windows. "Come on, Pam. Riva might be upset, but that's not why she's hanging out in her room right now." "Yeah, you're probably right," Pam agreed, sighing. "She likes to keep people waiting, especially me, her own cousin." "We'll just outwait her, that's all." Willow continued to pace, her face hard and determined. "We have to get her to make that business deal with us." "I know." Pam felt annoyed with herself. They should never have let Riva get her hands on those scarves until they had some kind of contract. "I feel like such a jerk. I mean, I know Riva. She uses everybody, and now she's using us." Willow laughed harshly. "Not for much longer. You can count on that." Pam stared at her. Dressed in black, pacing back and forth, Willow reminded her of a panther on the prowl. "What do you mean?" she asked. "If she doesn't make a deal with us, do you think we should take the scarves back or something?" "Maybe," Willow muttered. "Or maybe—" She broke off as Riva entered the living room. Pam jumped up from the chair. "Riva, hi, how are you?" "Oh?" Riva sighed and shook her head. "Still kind of in shock, I guess. I really need to rest." "It's terrible about Tracy," Pam agreed. She cleared her throat. "Listen, Willow and I know this is a bad time, but we have to work out a business arrangement with you. We need some sort of contract." "Are you crazy?" Riva's blue eyes blazed. "There was a murder? I've been through a total nightmare? I found the body, remember?" "Like you're really going to let anybody forget," Willow muttered. Riva frowned at her, then turned back to Pam. "I can't believe you two actually came here to talk business when one of my models is dead." "You don't have to shout," Pam told her. "I feel awful about Tracy, but we still have to think about the show." "The show?" Riva asked sarcastically. "You can probably forget the show. The murder happened in the middle of Dalby's, in case you've forgotten. Daddy is probably going to cancel the whole thing. Oh no. Pam felt as if the wind had been knocked out of her. Cancel the show? After all the work they had done? Reva, do you really think he'll... Before Pam could finish, Robert Dalby strode into the room. He nodded a greeting to Pam and Willow, then held his arms out to Reva. Honey, are you all right? Daddy, Reva cried, rushing over to him. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so upset about Tracy. It's terrible. Terrible, Mr. Dalby agreed, hugging her. I was so worried about you when I heard the news. I'm fine, Reva assured him. I mean, it was awful and everything, but I'm okay. Thank goodness. Mr. Dalby gave her another hug. Daddy? What about my fashion show? Reva asked. Are you going to cancel it? Robert Dalby frowned. No, he said thoughtfully. I don't see any real reason to. Pam exchanged a glance with Willow. Willow tilted her head toward Uncle Robert and mouthed the words, Tell him now. Pam nodded. That's really great, Uncle Robert, she said. Now, Willow and I can go ahead and work out our business agreement with Reva. Her uncle stared at her in surprise. Why, Pam, are you involved in Reva's scarf show too? Reva's scarf show? Pam gritted her teeth and took a deep breath as she and Willow drove away from the Dalby mansion a few minutes later. Uncle Robert still didn't have a clue that she and Willow had designed the scarves. Just as Pam had started to tell him the truth, the maid interrupted. He had an urgent call from New York. Uncle Robert rushed upstairs to take it. And Reva, still pretending to be freaked out over Tracy, told them she had to lie down. We'll talk business some other time, she promised. Sure, Pam thought. Some other lifetime. Can you believe it? She asked, glancing at Willow. Reva didn't even tell Uncle Robert that we're making all the scarves. She's taking credit for everything. I can believe it. Willow gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. Reva should die next, she declared in a harsh, angry voice. She really should. Willow! Pam cried, shocked. What's wrong with you? Don't ever talk like that again. I mean it. Willow's lips curved in a grim smile, and her eyes flashed with a cruel anger. A chill ran up Pam's spine as she gazed at her friend's expression. I haven't known her that long, Pam thought. She's tough, I know that much. Very tough. But she isn't really capable of murder, is she? Chapter 15. Rory, no, please! Grace sat tensely on the edge of the bed, clutching the phone with both hands. Please go away. You got what you came for, didn't you? She heard Rory's laugh, and flinched as if he'd hit her. So much bitterness in his voice, so much hatred. What had she done to make him hate her so much? Rory continued talking, but the words didn't matter. All Grace heard was the savage fury behind them. Her heart pounded in her chest, and her hands were so slick with sweat she almost dropped the phone. Stop it, she gasped, breaking into the stream of hatred pouring into her ear. Rory, please, please go away. Get out of Shadyside and leave me alone. She gently fingered her black eye. Haven't you hurt me enough? Aren't you satisfied yet? Rory didn't bother to answer. He just started in where he left off. It's as if he didn't even hear me, Grace thought. He doesn't care how I feel. All Rory cares about is revenge. You're crazy, she cried, interrupting him again. Do you hear me? You're totally... Grace broke off suddenly and looked up. Reva stood in the doorway, staring at her with a mixture of curiosity and distaste. Is that Rory? Reva whispered. Grace shook her head. If Reva knew it was Rory, she would insist on calling the police. And I can't, Grace thought. I'm afraid of what might happen. Grace spoke quickly into the phone. Sorry, I have to go now. Bye. She hung up and forced a smile. Hi, Reva. That wasn't Rory? Reva asked. No, it was my mother, Grace lied. She called while I was on the other line. Reva raised an eyebrow skeptically. Grace stood up and walked to the dresser. I made the big mistake of telling her about Tracy. She got all upset and thought I should come home. She peered into the mirror and flicked her fingers through her hair. You know what mothers are like, she added with a sigh. Not really? Reva lowered her eyes. Oh, I'm sorry, Grace cried. Your mother is dead. I almost forgot. It was stupid of me to say that. She peered at Reva in the mirror. Anyway, I'm glad your father didn't cancel the scarf show. Reva gave her a satisfied smile. Not as glad as I am. I'm sorry Tracy is dead, but that show is really important to me. It would have been dumb to cancel it when I can get another model just like that. She snapped her fingers. Besides, the show must go on, right? Definitely. Grace picked up a bottle of foundation makeup and shook it. Listen, want to go out and do something together tonight? I think this stuff will cover the bruise around my eye, so I won't look like a raccoon. No, I have a date tonight. Riva checked her watch. That's what I came to tell you. I have to leave in a few minutes. Daddy's going to drop me off on his way to his dinner meeting. That's okay. Grace set the makeup down. Her hand still trembled from Rory's phone call. Actually, I'm still feeling kind of beat. I think I'll stay here and just take it easy. Whatever. Riva smoothed her hair and strode to the door. Catch you later. Sure. Have fun. Oh, I will, Riva assured her with a grin. I definitely will. As Riva closed the door, Grace collapsed onto the bed again. Riva didn't believe that call was from my mother, Grace thought, but at least she didn't keep questioning me about Rory. Grace eyed the bedside phone warily. It stayed silent. But Rory will call back. I know he will. It's only a matter of time. Rory isn't finished with me yet. Riva sat in the booth at Pete's and tapped her foot impatiently. Grant was 5 minutes late. Where is he? She wondered, annoyed. Doesn't he know I need him? He has to know about Tracy. Liza must have told him I found her body, and he should have been here, waiting for me, worried about me. Riva took a sip of her soda, then glanced around the pizza place. Still no sign of Grant. If he doesn't show up in 3 more minutes, I'm out of here. I'll go home and... And what? Hang out with Grace? What fun, she thought sarcastically. We can sit around and watch her bruise turn yellow. Too bad Grace's mother hadn't insisted that she come home. Actually, Riva was surprised Grace hadn't jumped at the excuse to get out of Shady's side. With Rory stalking her and Tracy murdered, wouldn't she feel safer at home? But no. Never mind that she walked around shaking like a leaf and jumping at shadows. Grace wanted to stay. And I'm stuck with her, Riva thought gloomily. Hey, why the long face? Grant asked, sliding into the booth next to Riva. Sorry, that was a stupid question, he added, slipping an arm around her shoulder. You must still be freaked about Tracy. Of course I am, Riva gave him a cool look. Plus, you're late, Grant. I know, I'm sorry. He pulled her close and kissed her. Hey, don't be angry. Riva kissed him back, breathing deeply. His skin was cold and smelled of the outdoors. I'm not too angry, I guess, she murmured. But I thought you'd understand how upset I am, about Tracy, I mean, and I thought you'd be here waiting for me. I was counting on it. I wanted to be here sooner, but... Grant pulled away and shrugged out of his jacket. But what? Something came up. He smoothed his dark hair and smiled nervously. So, did you order yet? Riva shook her head. What came up? She asked. Grant's smile faded and he sighed. Liza. Liza? Riva sat up straight and gazed at him icily. You were with Liza? Is that why you were late? No, nothing like that, he replied. She called me earlier to tell me about Tracy, but I haven't seen her today. I don't get it, Riva told him. You weren't with Liza, but she's the reason you're late? Yeah, I just can't help feeling guilty about sneaking around behind her back, Grant admitted. When she called, she asked if we could get together tonight. I made up some excuse, and she bought it. Didn't even suspect I was lying. So, what are you worried about? I'm worried she'll find out. Grant sighed again. I'm worried about lying. I'm just, I don't know, feeling guilty. Oh, this is fun, Riva thought. A guy who's going to cry on my shoulder because he feels guilty about cheating on his girlfriend. This is almost as much fun as staying home with Grace. Still, Grant is awfully cute, and I really do need him now, with everything I'm going through. I deserve Grant, and I know how to get him. Smiling sweetly, Riva put her hand on Grant's arm. Listen, if you feel that way about Liza, maybe we should just forget the whole thing, she told him. No, he took her hand and squeezed it. I don't want that, Riva. I really don't. Riva smiled. Good. I need you much more than Liza does, so forget about her, okay? She leaned close and kissed him. Grant kissed her back, softly at first, then harder. I'll try, he whispered. Don't try, Riva whispered back in a throaty voice. Do it. As Grant drove Riva home a little while later, Riva leaned her head back and gazed out the car window. Shady's side looked like a Christmas card town, snow on the ground, wreaths on the telephone poles, snowmen in the yards, and colored lights strung on every tree and bush. I wish I could get into the spirit, Riva thought. Maybe when the scarf show is a hit, I'll feel more in the mood. At home on the porch, she gave Grant a long kiss. I can't wait to see you again, she murmured, her lips against his cheek. Let's meet again tomorrow, after I'm finished working. Tomorrow. Of course. Riva glanced at him. Why? You don't have other plans, do you? Grant hesitated for just a second, then shook his head. I'm all yours, Riva. Good. That's the way I like it. She kissed him again, then slipped into the house. It was only 8:30. Not wanting to spend any time with Grace, she ran quietly up the stairs and tiptoed past Grace's room to her own. As she opened her door, the phone rang. Grant? She wondered hopefully. No, he just left, and his car didn't have a phone. It's probably Pam, she decided. Pam the pest. Honestly, doesn't she realize that I have more important things to think about than a business contract with her? Doesn't she know that without me, the only way she and Willow can sell those scarves is to peddle them on the street? For a second, Riva was tempted not to answer the phone, but she changed her mind. Before the phone could ring a third time, Riva hurried across the room and snatched it up. Yes, she answered impatiently. Riva. The voice was low and raspy. It didn't belong to Pam. It didn't belong to anyone Riva knew. Yes, she repeated. Who is this? That doesn't matter, the caller rasped. What are you? Shut up, Riva. Just listen to what I say. Are you listening? Riva gripped the phone and nodded. Are you? The voice demanded angrily. Yes, I'm listening, Riva replied. You deserve what Tracy got. Tracy? A chill of fear ran down Riva's spine. Did you hear me, Riva? The caller rasped. I'll tell you again just in case you missed it. You deserve what Tracy got. Chapter 16. Who is this? Riva demanded again. Tracy is dead, the caller whispered, ignoring Riva's question. Remember how she died? The image of Tracy flashed into Riva's mind, hanging from the pole, her eyes bulging lifelessly, blood snaking down her jacket. The caller gave a short, vicious laugh. Come on, Riva. You know exactly what I mean. Murder. That's what the caller meant, that Riva should be murdered, just like Tracy. Riva gripped the phone, almost frozen with fear. She was actually talking with Tracy's killer, and now the killer was after her. I wish I could see you right now, Riva, the caller whispered. You're probably shaking, wondering where to hide. Without meaning to, Riva glanced at her reflection in the mirror across the room. The caller was right. She looked terrified, pale and big-eyed and helpless. Get a grip, she thought, scowling at herself. You're not in danger, not at the moment anyway, and you're not helpless either. Quickly, Riva stared down at the phone. Thank goodness for caller ID. She yanked open the nightstand drawer, grabbed a pencil and her telephone book, and copied the caller's number from the caller ID screen. Remember what I said, Riva, the voice rasped. I'll be in touch. The caller hung up. You're not going to be in touch with anybody, Riva thought. Smiling grimly, she punched in the number of the Shadyside Police Department. This is Riva Dalby, she announced to the officer who answered. I want to talk to Detective Blake. What's this about? The officer asked in a bored tone. It's about Tracy Meacham, Riva said. Tell Detective Blake that I just got a call from her murderer, a threatening call. She paused dramatically. I also have the number the call was made from. Sounding more interested, the officer took the number and told Riva to wait for a call back. 20 minutes later, the phone rang. Miss Dalby, this is Detective Blake. We picked up your caller. We'd like you to come down to the station and make an identification. Who is it? Riva cried, but Blake had already hung up. Riva grabbed her coat and hurried out to her car. A cold wind blew icy snowflakes against the windshield as she drove through the streets. Riva turned the heater up full blast, but she couldn't stop shivering. She was actually going to see the murderer face to face. Who was it? Who? Who wants to do the same thing to me? Still shivering, Riva parked her car and ran into the station. Detective Blake met her inside the door. Thanks for coming. This way, he told her, striding off down a brightly lit hallway, the floor covered in mud-colored linoleum. Who is it? Riva asked, hurrying after him. Where did you find him? Or her? I didn't recognize the number. Was it a phone booth? Without answering, Blake stopped in front of a door, turned the handle, and pushed it open. Riva felt nervous, but angry too. Angry at having been threatened. Eager to point the finger at her caller, she took a deep breath and strode inside. A police officer stood against one wall, sipping from a styrofoam cup. He looked relaxed, almost bored, but his eyes never left the beat-up wooden table in the center of the room. Riva's eyes snapped to the person sitting at the table. She stopped, stunned. "You?" she gasped in surprise. Chapter 17. Daniel Powell sat in the chair, his eyes wide with panic as he stared back at Riva. "You?" she repeated. "You killed Tracy?" "No." Daniel leaped up, toppling his chair. In a flash, the uniformed officer pushed away from the wall. He clapped one big hand on Daniel's shoulder and used the other to pick up the chair. "Sit," he ordered in a gravelly voice. Daniel slowly sat down. His breath came hard and fast, as if he'd been running. Detective Blake glanced at Riva. "I take it you know him." Riva nodded. "Yeah, from college." She turned back to Daniel. "Why would you kill Tracy? You didn't even know her." "You're right. I didn't know her, and I didn't kill her," Daniel insisted. "Riva, you have to believe me." "Why should I?" she asked suspiciously. "I mean, you called me up and threatened me. You told me I deserved the same thing. Why should I believe anything you say?" "Because I'm telling the truth." Daniel raked his fingers through his sandy hair. "Look, I admit I called Riva tonight," he said to Detective Blake, "and I told you why." "Why don't you tell me?" Riva suggested coldly. "What did I ever do to deserve such a horrible call?" "I already told you," Daniel declared. "I came down to Shadyside as a surprise, and you pretended you didn't even know me. I was so steamed, Riva. I still am. So I made that call tonight to scare you, to pay you back for treating me like dirt." "And is that why you killed Tracy?" Riva demanded. "To pay me back for a harmless little joke?" "I didn't kill her," Daniel shouted. "How many times do I have to say it? I didn't kill Tracy." Daniel started to rise again. The officer shot him a warning glance. Daniel dropped back down, shaking his head, his gaze lowered to the floor. "You've got quite a temper, don't you, son?" Blake asked him. "Is that what happened last year in high school? You lost your temper?" Daniel didn't respond. "What do you mean?" Riva asked Blake. "What did he do last year in high school?" "Beat up a buddy," Blake told her. "Got arrested for assault." Riva stared at Daniel, horrified. She had actually gone out with this guy. "He wasn't a buddy," Daniel declared. "He ripped off some stuff from the school and then pointed the finger at me, got me in major trouble. When I found out, I let him have it. He deserved it." "The way Tracy deserved to die?" Blake asked. Daniel's face flushed and he clenched his fists. "I did not kill her," he insisted, almost spitting the words out. "I called Riva to scare her, but that's it, you hear me? You can't prove I did anything else." "We'll see." Blake nodded at Riva. "Let's go to my desk so you can give me your statement. Then you can go home." Riva glanced coldly at Daniel, then turned and followed Blake out of the room. "What did you do to get him so steamed?" Blake asked as they walked down the dark hall. "He showed up at my house late at night, and I told the security guard I didn't know him," Riva explained. "I don't know what the big deal was. I told Daniel the next day that I was only kidding." Blake raised an eyebrow, as if he didn't think it was very funny either. Riva shrugged. Some people just couldn't take a joke. Blake stopped at a metal desk and gestured for Riva to sit in the chair across from it. As he pulled a form from one of the drawers, Riva glanced around. Mustard yellow walls, chipped brown linoleum, and grimy windows. It's worse than tacky, she thought. How can he work in this dump? Brushing dust from the chair, Riva sat down and sighed. The whole place smelled of burned coffee. Her stomach felt queasy. Her head started to pound. She wanted to go home. Hadn't she done enough by coming down to identify Daniel? Blake fed the form into a typewriter and began punching keys with 2 fingers. "Hello," Riva thought. "Welcome to the 20th century. Hadn't the Shadyside police heard of computers?" "Spell your name, please," Blake requested. "Last one first." Riva sighed. "D-A." The desk phone rang. Blake answered quickly. Maybe he'll have to leave, Riva thought hopefully. She tapped her burgundy-colored nails on the chair arm and watched Blake's face for signs that he'd been called out on another case. The detective listened for a few seconds, frowning. "You're sure?" he asked. "No doubt?" Another pause. Blake's frown deepened. Riva glanced at her watch and swung her foot impatiently. Okay, thanks. Blake hung up and puffed out a big breath of air. Well, looks like Daniel was telling the truth. What do you mean? Riva asked. You mean he didn't kill Tracy? The detective shook his head. He has an alibi for the night of the murder. He wasn't anywhere near the store. Are you sure? My officers just confirmed it, Blake told her. The alibi is rock solid. We'll have to let him go. Riva's headache suddenly throbbed harder. Blake turned back to the typewriter. We might as well take down your statement, though, so you can press charges on that phone call. Riva stood up. I'll have to think about that, she told him. He threatened you, Miss Dalby, Blake reminded her, but we can't do anything about it unless you tell us to. Right now, I just want to go home. It's been a horrible night, and I'm exhausted, Riva declared. I'll be in touch. As she hurried down the hall toward the exit, Riva fumbled in her pocket for the car keys. One of the keys caught on the lining. She bent her head to untangle it, and crashed into Daniel. Daniel reached out to steady her. Get away from me, she snapped. Okay. Daniel backed away and zipped up his jacket. Just listen a second. I'm sorry about the phone call. Really, it was stupid. I didn't mean it. Riva gazed at a spot on the wall as if Daniel didn't exist. Oh, forget it, he exclaimed. I'm out of here. I don't know why I'm wasting my breath apologizing to you. Riva didn't know why either. Did he really expect her to forgive him? She held herself still, waiting for him to leave. Just remember this, Riva, Daniel muttered as he turned away and shoved the door open. Sooner or later, you're going to get what's coming to you. A cold wind blew in as the door swung shut behind him. He actually threatened me again, Riva thought with a shiver. Right here in the police station. The guy must be nuts. Should she go back and tell Detective Blake? Riva glanced down the ugly hallway and decided to go home instead. She could call Blake from there, where it was warm and comfortable. If she had to stay in this place one more second, her head would explode. Untangling the car keys from her pocket, she turned up her jacket collar and hurried outside. The snow had started to stick. Riva made her way slowly down the slippery steps and onto the sidewalk. The wind howled, pelting her face with icy flakes. She'd be lucky not to come down with pneumonia before this night was over. Bending her head and squinting her eyes against the stinging flakes, Riva hurried down the sidewalk. When she spotted her car, she began to run. Her foot came down on a patch of ice. As she flung her arms out to keep from falling, the keys flew from her hand and landed in the snow at the edge of the sidewalk. Just great. A perfect ending to a perfectly hideous night. Shivering and disgusted, Riva began searching for her keys. As she scuffed at the snow with her shoe, she heard a sound behind her. Footsteps. She glanced around. Hello? No one came into view. Riva saw the hulks of parked cars and the deep shadows between the streetlights. She turned back, searching the snow-covered grass, hoping to spot the keys and get out of here. Where were the stupid things? They had to be here somewhere. More footsteps. Riva spun around. Who's there? She called. The wind whipped the words from her mouth. Still no answer. Still no sign of anyone. Riva shivered again, but not from the cold. Who's there? Is someone there? Chapter 18. More footsteps, closer this time. Forget about the keys, Riva told herself. You're close to the police station. Run back inside and get help. Her heart pounding, Riva began to run. A shadow rose up from between two parked cars. Riva screamed and spun back in the opposite direction. Riva! A voice cried. Stop! It's me! Riva tried to stop and slid on the ice. She caught herself and whirled around. A figure came running toward her in the glow of a streetlight. Grace Morton. Riva's fear turned to fury. Grace, she shouted, what are you doing here? Shh! Gasping for breath, Grace scurried along the icy sidewalk. The wind had whipped her wispy brown hair into a tangled mess. Her nose was bright red, and her teeth chattered. Don't shout! You might— Why did you sneak up on me like that? Riva cried. You scared me to death. Not so loud, Grace urged, grabbing hold of Riva's arm. I wasn't sneaking up on you. You could have fooled me, Riva snapped. It wasn't me. Grace glanced around in a panic. It must have been Rory. What? Rory is out here? Yes, he's after me. That's what I've been trying to tell you, Grace cried. He's out of control. He says he's going to kill me, and you too. He's going to kill you for hiding me. Riva felt a flash of terror. Her heart thundering, she hurried back to the spot where she dropped her keys. "What are you doing?" Grace demanded. "Your car is over there." "I dropped the keys," Riva cried. "Don't just stand there, Grace. Help me find them." Grace hurried over and began scuffing at the snow along with Riva. "Hurry," she urged, practically whimpering with fear. "He's crazy. Crazy. We have to go." Gasping in panic, Riva scraped at the snow with the side of her shoe. Something jingled. "I found them!" she cried. She bent over to pick them up. "He's coming! Hurry, Riva!" Grace exclaimed. Riva snatched up the keys and dashed toward her car, afraid to look back, afraid to see Rory bearing down on them. At the car, Riva fumbled with the keys, trying to find the right one. Grace whimpered again. "Should we run into the station?" Riva wondered. "No, let's just get away from here." She finally found the key and jammed it into the lock. She yanked open the door and threw herself inside, scrabbling frantically to get the key into the ignition. Grace pounded on the passenger window. Riva turned the key and hit the power lock button. Grace tumbled into the seat. "I saw him!" she cried, her teeth chattering. "Get us out of here! Hurry!" Riva gunned the engine, put the car in gear, and stomped on the accelerator. The car shot forward, then stopped as the tires whined and spun on the ice. Grace cowered in her seat. Riva gritted her teeth and put the car in reverse. She rocked it back, then forward again. Finally, the tires caught. Riva floored the gas pedal, and the car leaped forward with a roar. The speedometer shot up to 60 as the car hurtled down the street. Riva let up on the gas. "Hurry, hurry, hurry," Grace kept urging. "I have to slow down or we'll spin out of control." Riva glanced in the rearview mirror. The street was empty. No cars. No one running after them on foot. "Besides, there's nobody behind us. We made it, Grace." Grace hunched down in the seat, shivering. "We'll never make it," she muttered. "Not for good, anyway. Rory will always be after me." Riva turned off Division Street. "This is crazy," she declared. "I wasn't thinking clearly. I panicked. We should have run into the police station. I should turn around, go back, so you can get them to arrest Rory." "No!" Grace bolted upright in the seat. "Don't do that. Please, Riva. Rory will kill me if he finds out I went to the police. He'll kill us both." "According to you, he's going to do that anyway." Riva shuddered and flipped the heater on high. "Did he really say he'd kill me too?" Grace nodded. "And if he finds out I told the police, he'll just go into hiding. Trust me, he's very sneaky. They'll never find him, and just when we think it's safe, he'll show up and get us." Riva shuddered again. Would she have to look over her shoulder the rest of her life just because she'd been nice enough to invite Grace home for the holidays? "Remind me never to do anything that nice again," she told herself. "It's definitely not worth it." "What happened anyway?" she asked as she turned another corner, heading into North Hills. "Did Rory come to the house?" "He called," Grace told her. "He said he was close, real close. I didn't believe him at first, but a few minutes later, I heard the dogs barking like mad. When I looked out the window, I saw him." "Inside the grounds? Where was the guard?" Riva demanded. "Rory wasn't inside the grounds. He was outside the gate." Grace held her raw, cold hands in front of the heating vent. "I didn't see the guard. Maybe he was trying to quiet the dogs or something." "Rory would never make it past the dogs or the guard," Riva told her. "You should have stayed in the house." "Maybe, but I panicked," Grace admitted. "I couldn't help it. I just had to get out. I ran out the back way and kept running until I got downtown." "Too bad you stopped there," Riva thought. "You should have kept running, right out of my life." "I'm sorry," Grace murmured. "I know I'm causing you a lot of trouble, Riva." Riva rolled her eyes. "Then why don't you just pack up and go home?" she thought. Riva sighed. "It's not just you," she told Grace. "Daniel made this awful phone call to me. That's why I was down at the police station. He actually told me I deserved what Tracy got. Can you believe it? All because of that stupid joke I pulled." Grace shook her head. "That's awful. I guess you hurt his feelings." Riva sniffed. "Oh, please. I mean, I didn't ask him to come. Daniel is a loser, that's all. I'm glad I met Grant." "I bet Liza isn't glad," Grace murmured. Riva snorted. "If she can't hold onto her boyfriend, that's her problem. Besides," she added, "I really need Grant with everything that's going on." "You mean Tracy's death?" Grace asked. "That was so horrible." Riva nodded. "And it really messed up the scarf show. The first one is tomorrow, you know, and we never really got a chance to rehearse. I'll have to hire a new model first thing in the morning. I just hope she doesn't fall on her face." "I'm sure everything will go okay," Grace assured her. "It better," Riva declared. "The scarf show is really important to me. I can't let anything ruin it. As Riva pulled to a stop in front of her house, Grace sat up, tense again. Riva glanced around warily. She hadn't seen a car following them, but that didn't mean anything. Rory might have come a different way. Still, everything seemed quiet. If Rory were here, the dogs would be barking, she told Grace. Come on, let's get inside. As they left the car and dashed up the front steps, the door swung open. Riva's father stood there, a grim expression on his face. Daddy? Riva cried. What happened? What's wrong? I have some bad news, Riva, Mr. Dalby told her, his voice as grim as his expression. Some very bad news.